As a salon or spa owner, cosmetology school gave you the skills to serve clients, but it definitely didn't teach you how to run a business. Somewhere along the way, you probably thought ownership would mean freedom, but instead you're working more hours than ever, barely paying yourself, and low-key worried everything's going to fall apart the second you step away. Welcome to the Beauty Biz Breakdown, where we give you the real strategies, systems, and structure that you need to fully step into the CEO seat in your beauty business. Hey friends, welcome back to the Beauty Biz Breakdown, the go-to podcast for salon and spa owners who are ready to build a more profitable, more predictable beauty business. I'm Brie, and as always, I've got my bestie and co-host Chandra here with me today. Hey girl, how are you?
Oh, hello. I'm doing good today.
Awesome, I love to hear it. Well, today we are getting into something that honestly, I think most salon owners don't think about until they are already in a situation. We are going to talk about business insurance, not just having it, but actually understanding what it covers and how situations inside of your salon or spa can actually turn into claims. Something that I think Chandra and I see all the time is business owners treat insurance like a checkbox. You sign up for a policy, you feel like you're covered, and then you just kind of move on. But if you've never really slowed down and looked at what's actually included or what could kind of put you in a situation where you actually need to use it, you're really kind of operating without the full picture and you could be putting your business at risk. So today I want to walk through how these situations actually show up in real life inside of a salon or spa, the small things that can happen behind the chair that can turn into bigger issues if they're not handled right, and why understanding this side of your business matters way more than what you could ever think. I want to say this, Chandra. We are not trying to make people nervous. We're not trying to make people second guess everything that they're doing inside of their business. This is just about awareness. Because when you understand how these things actually start, you're able to handle them differently. You can protect your business in a different way. Now, I also think we have to say this. Chandra and I, we are not insurance advisors at all. We are not legal professionals. If you ever find yourself dealing with a claim or anything like that, you need to talk to someone who actually specializes in that. Chandra, how often do you think people even think about their insurance policy inside of their business?
I don't think they ever think about their insurance policy inside their business. Like you said, I think it's just a checkbox. They're like, okay, I got insurance. And then they forget all about it.
Yeah, it's one of those things, right? Owners hear the word business insurance and they just tune it out. They know that they need it. They know that they're supposed to have it, but a lot of them have never really sat down and asked, what do I actually have? What does it actually cover? And what kind of situations could actually come back and cause a problem for my salon or spa? I actually worked for an attorney for a very, very long time, and we dealt with insurance claims nonstop. And so my insurance policy is super stellar. Like I look at it all the time, but rarely do people do this. And I think we need to talk about this just a little bit more because it's not just something that you buy or check off of a box. It's not. It is there to protect your business when something happens. But if you don't even understand the type of protection that you have or what type of claims can even happen, you are going to get in trouble if you're not careful. So I think the first thing that we need to talk about are the types of insurance coverage that every salon and spa owner should at least know about. And we're not going to go super deep here because it can get boring. All you need is basic understanding. The first one is general liability. This is actually tied to your space. So if something physical happens inside of your salon or spa, somebody slips, somebody falls, somebody gets hurt, or something of theirs gets damaged while they are in your salon, that's where this general liability kind of comes into play. It's the broad physical environment side of your business. Then you've got what's called professional liability. And this one is tied to the actual service that you're performing. So hair, skin, lashes, waxing, whatever it is, anything where a client could come back and say that the service caused them harm, damage, or that it wasn't done properly. This is really directly connected to the work that you're doing behind the chair or inside of the salon or spa. So you can see how those two are different. Now, depending on your setup, There are other pieces that can matter too, like workers' comp. If you have a team, coverage for your space, especially like if you own the building or rental insurance, equipment, you can even cover retail and things of that nature. But at a minimum, general liability and professional liability are the two that you really need to understand because those are the ones that are most tied to what actually happens inside of our industry. Chandra, when you think about the two that we've kind of talked about, do you feel that people even know that those two exist, that they're actually different? Or do you think people just say this is insurance and just leave it at that?
I mean, I think they just think it's insurance and they leave it at that. I know even like for myself a long time ago before I had to make some claims, I had the same thing. I was like, I don't know, what do I even have? And so I think you really do have to understand the difference in those and really know like how to handle those if you ever have to make a claim. So they're definitely, I think they're two completely different ways that you handle it, and I think that's something that nobody really knows what to do.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, they really don't. And some people, like myself, have been in business for decades and never even had to file a claim. So, you know what I mean? If you've never had to file a claim, then why would you ever even really look into it? Because the further it goes out, the more you just kind of forget about it. So, we talked about the coverage types just a little bit. I think the next thing that we need to talk about is what kinds of claims can actually come up on a policy. And this is where it all starts to get pretty real for you. It's also where a lot of owners realize that these situations, they're not as rare or even as dramatic as you would think that they have to be. A lot of these claims start really, really small and normal inside of your salon, just a normal situation, and then they grow into a bigger issue. So the first type of claim is bodily injury. That just means a client gets physically hurt while they are in your business. This would be the slip and fall, right? That's the easiest example. Someone gets up from the shampoo bowl, there's water, there's hair, there's product on the floor, and they slip. You check on them, you help them get up, everybody kind of laughs it off, and then everybody just moves on. But then later on, their wrist hurts, their back hurts, something of that nature. You know what I mean? Something's bothering them more than what they expected, I guess. Bodily injury is one of the funny ones because it can also be things like hot tools or hot wax or even hot water. You would be surprised at the number of people that make claims because the water was too hot at the bowl. So, if the client is physically hurt while they are in your space, it's going to fall under this category. Chandra, do you feel like this is one of those areas where owners don't realize how fast a normal day can turn into a real issue?
Yeah, I mean, I think you think, oh, they're fine, everything's good, it's not going to be a big deal, and then yeah, it can blow up into something crazy really fast. Yeah, you need to make sure you're covered and you know what to do in those situations.
Absolutely. And bodily injury is one of those funny things because, you can think that you're okay and days can go by and you just get more sore and more sore. And so it's like a car wreck. I've been in a car wreck before and I thought I was fine. And 48 hours later, I could barely move. And so your body reacts differently all the time. So this is really, really important. All right. The next claim type is going to be chemical or service related injury. This is one that salon and spa owners really need to pay attention to because this is tied directly to the work that you're doing. This is when something from the service causes a reaction or a problem. Maybe it's the color causes irritation, or bleach creates scalp issues, or a skin treatment leaves the client with maybe a stronger reaction than what was expected. My daughter had to file one of these one time. She got her lashes done and her eyes like swelled shut. It was a big deal. I think this category is a little bit trickier because sometimes the signs can be very, very subtle at first, kind of like bodily injury, right? Maybe the client says something feels a little tingly. Maybe they don't say anything at all. And then later on, there's redness, there's swelling, there's irritation, there's breakage, there's discomfort that clearly went further than what anybody expected. And now the service itself is going to start being questioned. Chandra, do you feel like this is where things get kind of confusing for owners because nothing really seemed wrong during the appointment, but then it turns into an issue days after the client leaves?
Yeah, I do. I think that's definitely something that happens pretty often. And I think it's something that again, like we're used to working with all these chemicals all the time. We're used to what they do. Sometimes they can just cause a weird thing momentarily, and it doesn't usually last or stick with somebody for a long time, but it can. Like I've seen it happen before when, somebody was a little bit tingly, the scalp might have been a little bit red, but everything seemed like it was okay. It wasn't anything major. And then later on, they've had, an issue that went further.
Yeah, it can happen very, very easily. The next one is property damage, and this is exactly what it sounds like. Something of the client's gets damaged while they are at your salon. Color gets on their clothes, bleach spots on jackets, something spills on a purse, makeup gets on a personal item, literally anything like that. I think owners tend to minimize this one because nobody got hurt. But that doesn't mean that it's going to stay small to the client. If something that they care about is ruined or it can't be fixed, it is going to turn into a really big problem for you. Chandra, do you feel like this one is one that owners just kind of brush off too quickly because it feels less serious than a type of injury?
Oh yeah, for sure. And I mean, I think even sometimes that they think the client's just being dramatic, like I've seen that too, where they're just kind of like, it's like one little dot of color on your designer bag or something. Like it's not a big deal, but it is to the client. And I think that's the part that we aren't always thinking about. Like I said, we're in a day to day and we get color all over us all day long. So you kind of forget that it's like it to someone else. That's a major thing.
Absolutely. And I think we have so many emotions that come into play if we are the client, right? That things mean something to us. There's sentimental value. There's all of these things that as stylists or salon owners, we don't even understand at the time that people go home and they start thinking about. And so it starts adding up and adding up really, really big. I think the next one is professional liability. And this one is huge because this is where the service itself, it kind of comes under fire. This is when the client believes the service was done incorrectly or poorly or in a way that caused harm or did not match exactly what was agreed to. This is the client kind of saying, this is not what we talked about, or this is not what I asked for, or my hair was fine before and now it's damaged, or this made things way worse than it ever was. What makes this one so important is that it's not always about one giant mistake. A lot of the time, it kind of comes down to the client feeling like what happened does not match what they believed was going to happen. Maybe the tone came out differently. Maybe the haircut feels completely different than the inspiration picture that they showed you. There are so many things that can go wrong here. This one is so important. It's not just about the technical work. It's also about what was communicated, what was understood, what was promised, and whether the client feels like the service was handled the way that it should have been. This is why your consultations matter so much. Expectation setting matters, and clear communication matters more than I can even stress. Because if those things are weak, these issues are going to show up multiple times in your business. Now, the next one is emotional distress. And this one needs to be separated because it's not the same thing as professional liability, even though the two can absolutely overlap and they overlap quite a bit. Emotional distress is about the emotional impact that the experience has on the client. This is when someone leaves feeling embarrassed, or they feel anxious, or they feel uncomfortable, or maybe just not like themselves because of something that happened inside of your studio. Maybe the result feels so off to them that they just feel like they can't even go to work, or they don't want to be seen out in public. They are avoiding taking pictures, or they just feel awful about the way that they look. Maybe it comes from how they felt during the appointment. Maybe they felt ignored, brushed off, talked over, trapped in a service that they were uncomfortable with, or like they didn't have control over what was happening. That feeling is going to stay with them for a long time, and it is going to bring up a ton of emotions. So this is not about the service itself. It is about the full experience and how the client says that it affected them afterward, how they felt in your chair, how they felt that they looked in the mirror, how they felt when they walked out. Now, this one, I have to say this. I don't want anybody out there listening to just think that people can make things up and now you are in some terrible situation in your salon and things are fixing to get crazy. That is not what this is at all. It's really not. It's not exactly how it happens. Somebody doesn't just get to say something and it automatically becomes a claim. There's a process that has to be gone through. There's people that are going to get involved. There's things that are going to be looked at. It has to actually make sense based on what actually happened inside of your business. But at the same time, it's really important for you to understand that this is something that can come up and it happens. So you need to be aware of it. Chandra, I think this is probably the hardest one as a business owner because it feels less black and white than all of the other ones combined. What do you think about these emotional distress claims?
I mean, I think it's hard because, like you said, it's the client is feeling a certain way. And we may not sort of understand that because, again, we're like, hey, to grow back, like we could do a deep conditioner, you'll be fine, or whatever it is. But I think we forget that we hold a lot of power in our industry. And so you have the power to make somebody to change their outlook on their life, to boost their confidence, to make them feel better. But on the other hand, you can also do the exact opposite if it's not done correctly or if something wasn't communicated right to where, like you said, if they're literally afraid to like take a photo or to go out in public because of something that happened, that's how they feel. And that's their emotional distress. Right. And so I think that's something that we don't take as serious as we should. And maybe we don't do the proper steps like we should all the time to ensure that that doesn't happen. I think, when those things do come up, if you've covered everything on your end, which I'm sure we'll talk more about, but if you've covered everything on your end, it's a non-issue, right? Like you can handle it without having it go to this degree. But it's when we don't really take it super seriously that I think those issues come up.
Yeah, I'm not gonna lie, these kinds of claims scare me just a little bit. And that's why I kind of wanted to put that disclaimer in there. I don't want people to automatically just think, oh my gosh, this is gonna happen. You know what I mean? But they are a little scary. They are a little tricky. And we don't know what people are thinking or feeling or what they are going through emotionally at all. And so they can come in and just be having a really bad day and nothing can add up. But like you said, when your client experience journey is intact and you are doing things the way that you're supposed to, these situations are rarely going to happen. But I also think you said it very well. We hold a lot of power. And I don't think it's fair for us as stylists, as professionals, to just automatically think that people are being dramatic in some way, shape, or form. I think that's the first place that our brain goes. And I think we should really take a step back and try to put ourselves more in the situation of the client when we're doing things like this. Because I can already see this happening, right? We're talking about something like this. I can see it on Facebook. People are saying, oh, this client did this. They were being dramatic. They were this. That's not always how it is it, Chandra?
No, not at all. And I think that most of the time it's not really how it is, and they're just not looking at it from that perspective.
I agree. I agree. Okay, so this is where everything we just kind of talked about really starts to come together and why this is not just checking something off of your box and moving on, like we said earlier. Because once you understand the kind of situations that can turn into these claims inside of your salon, whether it's somebody getting hurt, somebody getting something wrong done during a service, somebody getting something damaged, or a client feeling like the experience wasn't handled the way that it should have been, you really start to realize that this is all tied back to how your business is actually being run day to day. And the biggest piece of that is going to be documentation. Because if anything ever comes back later, it's not enough for you to just say, I remember exactly what happened. That is not going to help you. I'm going to tell you that right now. It's not going to help you. What matters is what you can actually show proof of. What did the client ask for? What did the consultation actually look like? What products were used? What notes were taken? What happened during that appointment and what was communicated all the way through? This is the only thing that's going to protect you, no matter what type of situation you're dealing with. Chandra, once again, this is where the client diary system that we coach on all the time comes into play, right?
Oh yeah, 100%. I mean, you just cover yourself and you don't have to worry. And that's the best feeling ever when you know you're covered and you don't have to worry no matter what comes up.
Absolutely. And something that I want to bring up, and I think this is where people need to really start thinking. We as professionals get in the habit so often of having our regulars come in all the time. We skip every single step because they've been in a million times. Just because they've been in a million times does not mean they don't need a consultation. It does not mean that you don't need documentation. And it does not mean that they are not going to have some sort of reaction or some sort of situation happen. Chandra, why is this such a bad idea to treat our regulars like they are our friends instead of our clients?
Well, because that's, I think, when those situations arise the most is because you're so used to it, you're not following through with what they need to know about whatever is happening with them if they make a change. Like I have a funny example I can give you right now that I was cutting my 7-year-old niece's hair and she wanted bangs. And so we had the conversation about bangs, but she's 7 and she really wants bangs. And so I even made her, we looked at inspiration photos because I'm like, okay, let's look at these pictures. And the team was kind of laughing. And I was like, you guys, I won't even move forward with cutting this 7-year-old child's hair that's related to me without making sure she fully understands what she's getting into. Even if she doesn't, she's 7, but still, I gotta just at least make sure. It was just funny because they were like, can't believe you had to make her get an inspo pic. I'm like, because I have to make sure. What if she doesn't want bangs all the way across her forehead and I cut them? Like, she's gonna freak out. So yeah, even then in that situation, most people I feel like would just be like, oh yeah, it's my niece. I'm just gonna cut her bangs and then have the child have a mental breakdown for who knows how long until they grow back, right? And so it is so important.
It is, and I think consistency is a super big deal here as well, because I think one of the biggest issues in salons is that everybody handles things differently. You've got one stylist that is documenting absolutely everything, another barely writing anything down, and someone else who may only start taking notes or doing something if something feels a little off or awkward or weird. And that just doesn't work. As an owner, that is not going to work for you and your business. If you want your business protected across the board, there has to be a real process around all of this. And it has to be followed every single time with every single client by every single employee, including yourself. Chandra, I think that story you told was really cool because once again, it shows the type of a leader you are in your business, though, right? It shows that it was your niece, you didn't care, your team was laughing, but you showed them the exact steps that they needed to take and why. If you're not going to let yourself off the hook for doing things, you're certainly not going to let them off the hook, right?
No, for sure. And not even just for the leadership part. Like that's just really important to me to make sure that things go right. And so I think that's, the biggest thing out of all of it.
Yeah, 100%. When owners say that they have documentation, you and I both know that a lot of times it's not actually consistent, nor is it documentation. It's really kind of all over the place, especially if they have a team. It is very different depending on the person. How often do we see this kind of just everywhere?
All the time. I mean, I think it's very easy for us to just get in our usual routine, right? Like we ask the questions, we do the thing. It's what we do all the time, and you don't have a lot of issues, so you just feel like it's not that big of a deal until something comes up, and then you realize that's not how you should do things.
Yeah. And that's why you and I are constantly saying that your business has to evolve and you have to check things in your business all the time, right? And redo things all the time, the same way that you need to check your insurance policy every single year. Not once, not when you open, but literally every year. You need to be doing this with your consultation process, your guest experience journey, your documentation process, literally all of it. Because your business changes, your services change, your team changes. And if these things in your business, including your insurance policy, if it doesn't reflect what you're actually doing right now, you are going to run into issues. A lot of owners assume that because they have this insurance, they are just going to be covered regardless. And I'm telling you right now, you are probably not covered on a quarter of what you think you're covered for. Being insured and being properly covered are not the same thing at all, and you have to understand it. And this is why you really need to go through that policy every single year. Chandra, when you go through your policy with your insurance company, what are some things that you look for every year to try to change or make sure that you're covered on?
I think one of the biggest things is making sure that the amount of coverage that you have is evolving with your business. Because I think you could start out with a very small team, very small space, or whatever, a limited amount of clients that are coming in. But as you grow, your policy needs to also grow. And I think that's a big one that people don't think about. They know they have it, they've had it for years, the same coverage, and then it doesn't cover something when it comes up because you've evolved beyond what that is. I think that's one of the biggest things that I look for. And then the other thing is just making sure that you fully understand, like, if something every single thing that could happen, what are you covered for? Like, just making sure, because insurance policies change too. Sometimes they'll give you a new, what is it, the declaration that they give you at the beginning of the year. And sometimes there's things that they've changed that they don't cover, and it's in there, but you're not really reading it. So you just assume everything's still just the same.
Yeah, I agree with that 100%. When I am in the habit of reviewing mine every single year, there are questions that I ask. I ask, what is covered? What is excluded? That is something that people forget all the time. What are my exact limits on everything? And if something happened tomorrow and I had to make a claim, what would you need from me so that I could win this claim or so that it could be easily finished? And my insurance company hates me sometimes because I ask those things and I want them to tell me in detail. I don't take surface level answers, but I don't care. It's my business at the end of the day. It's my name, and I have to know that I'm protected. I think one of the last pieces that we need to talk about is how the insurance company actually gets involved. Because I think this is where people's minds kind of go straight to worst case scenario. And that's not usually how it always plays out. Okay. Most of the time, it starts with something just getting reported. A client reaches out, they say something happened, they're unhappy with something, whatever. And at that point, you are going to notify your insurance company that there is a situation. That's all it is right now, is a situation. From there, it's not like everything just blows up overnight. What happens is they're going to start looking into things. They're going to look at what actually happened, what service was done, what all of your documentation and notes say. So, once again, you've got to have that, what communication actually exists in your business, and how everything was handled from start to finish. So, this is a very good lesson on you don't go back and forth with the client. Once it gets to a certain point, you have to stop. Your insurance company is basically putting the full story together to figure out if this is going to fall under your coverage and what needs to happen next. This is why this is so important. And I don't know what made me think of this, Chandra, but I was thinking we've never done anything really about insurance. And I think a lot of people out there probably are not setting themselves up for success the way that they need to when it comes to insurance. Chandra, what do you think would surprise most owners about what actually gets looked at once a claim is in front of the insurance adjuster?
I mean, I think there's a lot of little things that can go into that. But, like, for example, I had an issue where we had a waiting room chair that somebody leaned forward and the whole chair fell over and they fell and they got nothing major, but it was enough where I did do that. I called the insurance company. She was kind of making a big deal about it. And so, what I didn't know, and these are the little things that you want to make sure you're finding out, is that if the chair that I had was not a commercial rated chair, I would have had no coverage. And luckily it was. And we were fine. She didn't actually end up pursuing anything, but I still needed to cover those bases just in case she did, and we were ready to go and to know what was going on. So I just think little nuances like that, like really talking to them and finding out, what am I covered for? If if I had just bought chairs at, some furniture store that weren't commercially rated, and she did decide to pursue something, we wouldn't have been covered.
It's crazy. It really is crazy how it all works. I'm telling you, my insurance adjuster and my attorney and my tax person, they're like my best friends, my three amigos. I talk to them constantly, like I'm always in contact with them. And I think this is what every single business owner needs to get into the habit of. We get so focused on services and clients in this industry. And as business owners, there are things that matter way more so that you can actually take care of your clients. And I don't think we put enough emphasis on any of this stuff. When you really zoom out and look at all of this that we've talked about, It's not about running your business in fear. That's not what Chandra and I are trying to say at all. It's about running it like a real business, like a professional business, a business that understands risk because business has risk, a business that understands protection, a business that is not just hoping nothing ever happens, but actually making sure that they have the right coverage and the right internal processes in place in case something does. If you're listening to this right now and you're feeling a little bit overwhelmed and you're thinking, okay, I get it, but how do I make sure that I am covered and making sure that I'm not missing anything? Here are 5 steps that you can do to get yourself in a pretty solid situation. So, step one, actually look at your freaking insurance policy and make sure that it matches the business that you're running right this very second. Not last year, like Chandra said, not 10 years ago, right this very second. You have to look at this. Not just, I know I have one. Look at it. What type of coverage do you have? What services are included in that coverage? What is excluded? And what are your limits? You at least need to know that because I'm telling you right now, so many people assume that they are covered for every single service that they offer, and they're not. It's not always true. If you have added any services over time, you need to make sure that those are covered, right? If you brought lashes into your salon, are they covered? Extensions, are they covered? There is so much that you have to make sure. So you need to do that. Chandra, do you feel like most owners have ever really looked at their policy service by service or even sent an entire list of services to their adjuster to make sure that they're covered?
No, I don't think that they're doing that for sure.
Yeah, it has to be done. Call me crazy, but it has to be done. Step number 2, you want to tighten up your documentation process. Not we write some notes, but real consistent systems in place in your business that your entire team follows every single time. Consultations, services, formulas, anything that stands out. It should all be documented the same way across the board every single second of every single day. Because if something ever comes back later, what matters is what you can actually show to the insurance company. Chandra, when owners say they have the best guest experience journey out there, do you feel like it's actually as great as what they say across the entire team, or does it really depend on who's doing the service?
I think it depends on who's doing the service. I think that they might have some sort of system in place. A lot of owners in their business, they might have something in place, but I do think like it really just depends on those stylists or your service providers, like whoever's doing that service. If they aren't the ones following through, that's when you're going to have issues. And when you have a team, they all have to be on the same page.
Yeah, 100%. And that kind of leads us into step 3, which is making sure your team is aligned on communication. Because a lot of these situations, they don't start with a big dramatic experience. You can tell. They start with these small little gaps, right? Expectations that aren't clear, outcomes not being fully explained, or the client not fully understanding what they are actually agreeing to. So the more consistent your team is in how they communicate, not just document, but communicate, the less room there is for gaps to happen. Step number 4, review your policy every single year. I don't care what you got going on. Businesses change, services change, teams change. And if your policy doesn't reflect the business that you are running, you're going to be in trouble. So put it on your calendar, first of every year, end of every year, make sure that you're reviewing it. Step number 5, know who you need to contact if something did happen. A lot of people just call an 800 number for their insurance company. You should have a set adjuster that works with your business. You need to know who that is. Don't panic. Don't try to figure everything out in the moment, but know who you need to call, how you're going to reach them, and what's going to happen. Chandra, if somebody's listening to this and realizing that they've kind of been just winging this entire side of their business, what would you tell them to focus on before anything else?
I mean, I think I would definitely focus on getting a an insurance person that you can communicate with really well, because I do think a lot of times we'll get online and you just find some random insurance online and you put in your criteria and it gives you a policy, but I think that you're not necessarily covering all those checking all those boxes when you're doing that. And like I have somebody, that I call when some anything. I'm like, "Hey, double check, am I good if this happens or if, something comes up? But you want to have someone I think that you can communicate with, that you can call. Again, like you said, not that 800 number that they're going to put you through 50 people before you can get anywhere. And then who knows? And so I think really that would be my first thing is because when you read those policies, most of that stuff looks like a totally different language. Like you don't even know what half of it says. And so I think really finding someone to help you decipher that and make sure you're covered is really important.
I would agree with that 100%. Shout out to Miguel because he's my bestie. I love him. He is amazing. You have to have an insurance person that you can trust, one that is actually looking out for you and your business and that is willing to work with you and help you make sure that you are set up correctly. Absolutely. Okay, so hopefully this gives you guys a clear place to start when it comes to making sure your business is actually protected and not just assuming that everything is covered. Now, before we wrap up, you guys know we got to get into this listener question real quick. Today's question came in from a salon owner who asked, how do I handle clients who constantly try to control the appointment? Like they question everything, they want to change the plan mid service, or they don't trust the process, but they still expect a perfect result. Chandra, take it away.
Fire them. Just get rid of them. I think it kind of comes back to some of the stuff we've been talking about today though, is that clear documentation and communication. If somebody's trying to take over the appointment or if they're trying to change stuff, like make sure you have waivers that they have to sign. Make sure you have like that clear conversation with them, like this is the expectation, this is what you're getting today. You want to move forward or not? Like don't let them kind of steamroll you. And I think that's one of the hardest things with like new stylists that we deal with too. That's why our process is very, very systematic because then even they can't let those clients get away with it, because it's like sometimes you just have to make sure that they are very clear and understand. And I think some people just try to take advantage of that. And so when you do have that clear documentation or that clear process that you walk through, it eliminates a lot of that.
Yeah. And I do agree with what you said in the beginning. Sometimes not every client is meant for you, and you can pick and choose who your clients are. I think we get so tied up in this industry of we just have to stay booked back to back to back to back to back. We will take anybody and everybody off the street. That is going to make you miserable. I'm not going to lie, it will make you miserable. You can be picky. You have the right to choose who sits in your chair and who doesn't. So give yourself a little bit of credit when it comes to that and choose your clients wisely. If you're not building your salon with your ideal clientele, I promise you, you will regret it later on. You will. Been there, done that, have the badge to prove it. All right. As we wrap this up, the biggest thing that I want salon and spa owners to really take away from this episode is this: insurance is not just something that you have in the background of your business. It is not just a policy that you set up one time and forget about it. It is directly tied to how protected your business actually is when something happens. Because these situations inside a salon, they're not always going to look the way that you think they're going to look. Something very, very small is going to happen and it is going to turn into something really, really big. It happens all the time. It starts small and it turns into really, really big things. Chandra, if somebody's out there right now and they are looking at their insurance policy and they realize I don't have the coverage that I need, but yet they are terrified to spend the money because budgeting is something that we talk about a lot to get the actual coverage. Where do they kind of need to start so that they can get the coverage that they need?
Yeah, I mean, I think you are going to have to just figure out how you fit that into your budget. And I think most insurance policies, they could be a little bit pricier when you are covering every single thing, but I mean, a few $100s a month just to cover, literally everything. I've seen policies that are $50 a month that salon owners have and they cover nothing. And so I think that's something you just have to prioritize and work on your budget to fit that into your budget because that's going to be a lot less expensive than having to cover any expenses that arise. People go out of business because of stuff like that. And so I think you have to really look at what's most important to you and how you can figure out to work that into your budget and shop around. Like, definitely look around at different places and see who's going to give you that best coverage for the best price. Because a lot of insurance companies will work with you on that stuff too. You just have to ask.
100%. Okay, guys, so now you are seeing and realizing that even things like insurance all fall back to systems that you have in your salon or spa business. Systems, structure, always. So if you're listening to this and you're thinking, okay, I probably need to tighten up some of the systems inside of my business, that is exactly the kind of work that we help salon and spa owners inside the Beauty Biz agency with. If you want help, getting support with putting systems in place or cleaning up your structure, making sure your business is actually set up to protect you from top to bottom, not just run on a day-to-day basis, head over to our website, the Beauty Biz Agency. Check out the resources that we have there. Book a free strategy call with our team. We will help you figure out what makes sense for your next step. And if this episode helped you or made you look at this side of your business maybe a little bit differently, send it to another salon owner who needs to hear it. Make sure that you are subscribed so you don't miss out on the next episode. And don't forget to leave us a review. That helps us more than you know. It helps other owners find the podcast. Also, make sure that you're following us on all social media platforms and get on our email list so you don't miss anything we've got going on. Chandra, how can our listeners stay connected?
Yeah, definitely follow us at the Beauty Biz Agency on Facebook or Instagram, or the Beauty Biz Mentors on TikTok, and shoot us a message with any questions you have. We can definitely answer those on the air. So if you've got something brewing, let us know.
All right, friends, that's a wrap on today's episode of the Beauty Biz Breakdown. We just want you running your business in a way where you actually feel protected instead of just hoping that things go smoothly. Until next time, understand what you have in place, stay on top of the details that actually matter, and keep leading your salon like the CEO you're becoming. Now go out there, make bank, run the show, and ditch that chair. And as always, keep slaying those business goals with a whole lot of swagger. If this episode lit a fire under you, don't just walk away and let it die out. Deep down, you already know where you want your business and your life to go. And the truth is, the only thing standing between where you are and where you want to be is a real plan to get you there. That's exactly what we help you build. So if you're ready to stop trying to figure it out on your own, head to thebeautybizagency.com and book your free strategy call. That call can give you the clarity that you've been needing and a real plan to move your business forward. Because at the end of the day, the only thing standing between you and the salon business you've been dreaming about is whether or not you're willing to take the action and the steps in order to build it.